Welcome to the rest of the panel as well. We got Mr. Steve Brown, who we're all familiar with, as well as Marius van Wyk, who we also all familiar with, and Mahen. But Mahen, I don't think you are that. I don't think you've been on the airwaves that long. So you're going to have to introduce yourself a little bit, and you're also going to kick off with a few pictures that you sent us last night of a wonderful installation. But I think this morning is just a Q&A. Again, we haven't got much prepared. We can go to these pictures, but we found that there's so many queries coming through all the time, and every time we have a Q&A session, we just don't get through it. So there's always seems to be room for more, and that's why we've decided to do this more and more often. It's not because we're lazy and don't have any presentations. It's about finding the right. It's about doing the best we can in terms of relaying information to you guys, the relevant stuff that you're looking for. So this is why we're doing it. So please, we're going to rely on your questions. So bring them in. We're going to kick off on two subjects, just to sort of get the juices flowing. But then we're going to switch over to the questions. Yeah, Mahen, you sent these to me last night. Well, these and a few others. Without mentioning names or anything, let's just talk through these.
Thank you, Richard. The reason I sent those yesterday is because I tripped on the geyser on the floor there. And if you look at the pictures, I mean, the reason why I sent it as well, or we want to talk about it, is that this warranty installation was done a few weeks ago. And to see that the installation being done in that manner currently is the reason why I sent them. I mean, it's a geyser that was removed and replaced upside down again, as you can see. I mean, you can see where the electrical point is on that geyser. Upon speaking to the guy who runs that establishment there, they change the thermostat every month. And he can't understand why he's got 300 liters of hot water and he's never got enough. I mean, if you look at the installation, they're never going to have more than maybe 30 or 40 liters of hot water that will come out of that geyser. I mean, the position of the PIRB.
Yeah, anti-siphon loop is not even there.
No anti-siphon loop there. The polycor pipe. The back of that geyser got the TP valve facing straight down.
You should actually give points to see you can find out what's right on it. Not what's wrong. You should actually, give some CPD points for whatever is right on this installation. But Mahen, what was the sort of feedback? Yeah, the sticker's still there. Yeah. Mahen, what was the sort of feedback from the owner of this establishment? In terms of the discussion that you've had with him. I mean, again, we don't want to go and mention names, but this is not typical, but it does come across.
The owner wasn't there, but the guy who runs the establishment was there, and he was wondering why can't he get enough hot water? I mean, those rooms that are being serviced there are 4 sleeper and 1 geyser per 4 sleeper, and they're always having to fight for hot water in the morning, every morning.
Looks like 1 sleeper and did the plumbing.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't find anything that I could say, okay, you know what, this was okay. There was nothing there that was really okay. And this is not very old, guys.
Yeah.
I just want to point something out here. Sorry, carry on, Steve. Carry on.
Yeah, the scary thing for me is that, again, and, we keep harping on these type of things, but I don't know where these sleepers sort of come out. I think it might be my daughter, is with zombies, and I think a zombie did this installation. But, the key thing for me is that this has been taken away from a reputable plumber. And this is why, we need to ensure, the promotion of IOPSA and licensed plumbers, because I'm going to tell you right now, this was never done by a licensed plumber. And it's frustrating for me that this type of work continues. And some plumber, that's licensed has gone out there, done a decent quote, submitted it, and it's come back to price, and now you have a situation where Mahen's gone there and identified all these problems. And guys, a blind man with a stick and a Labrador would be able to see this work wasn't done correctly. It's never going to be functional. And technically speaking, looking at it, it has to be redone. I mean, that's really where it goes back to, is go back to the beginning and get it sorted out. But it's frustrating that we can still see this kind of work coming up.
And Mahen, you mentioned that that one of these geysers was recently burst and was replaced by somebody, and it was replaced exactly like that. They didn't even change
Exactly like
the
that. Yeah,
pipework.
nothing. The
It's
one is lying on the floor, and the new one is there.
It's incredible. We all familiar with it, but just one thing that to point out why it is. There's many reasons, but there's a couple of main ones. Why it's such a bad idea to install a geyser not in the correct orientation. So obviously these brackets weren't shifted, and when he puts it from a floor-mounted position to a wall-mounted position, the thing rotates 90 degrees, and all the ports rotate as well. So what happens is the hot water outlet here. Okay, it's not even in the correct port to use as a hot water outlet, because that port is actually on the side of the geyser, or should be on the top. But anyway, he's used this one. But what happens here is that everything above that is air, and this thing is under pressure. So it's a 400 or whatever kPa system. Water does not compress. So we've got pressurized water, and if you open one side of a tank with compressed water or pressurized water, it just goes, that's fine, and it's decompressed. But air compresses. So you've got a tank full of compressed air there, which means that it wants to escape and it will expand rapidly. So if you open something or have a burst pipe or something here, you've got a hell of a story on your hands, because it's 75 liters of compressed air. It's like a compressor with 75 liters of compressed air in it, which is almost like a bomb. And when you introduce hot water and steam to that, you're in deep trouble. And then, of course, 100 other reasons. But that's whoopsie. My apologies. So let me just go back to these. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I just wanted to mention that, man.
No, great.
And it's just on a hollow block wall. It looks like block wall as well, or is that cement?
No, it's a cement brick wall.
Okay.
All the pipes they use are UG pipe, all above ground on the sewer, not even falling. No gullies, no IEs, no supports.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. There's not even a. You're right, Steve. I think we should give away 300 CPD points per year.
Yeah.
For the first oak that can identify something correct here.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's shocking. It really is. You know, Marius, you quiet. Eh? Was this down your part of the world that you're so quiet?
Maybe.
I'm just
Maybe,
astounded to see what is out there, and we find that occasionally as well, especially when we go towards the smaller towns. You know, if I'm talking about the Karoo towns and stuff, which is a problem. We know that we don't have many qualified plumbers out there, and then we have the handymans that do the work because they can't find the plumbers out there. So this is a challenge, I think, in our country, is that when we go to areas where there aren't many, the population is scarce as well, and then obviously you don't have the qualified people out there, and then obviously plumbers don't want to travel that far. But the more awareness we can get towards the consumer with this, and obviously with the people when they sell the geyser as well. I've noted now lately one of our IOPSA members build it. They say to you, when you load the geyser, they say, remember, a licensed plumber must install this, and you must get a certificate of compliance. So the wheel is on the roll, and that we are getting it there, and compliance is coming. But yeah, we must just, when we see something like this, we can ask the owner of the premises, ask the questions, did you get a certificate of compliance? I see there's a lot of things wrong here, and then obviously educate as we go along. And that is a part of a plumber's job as well. And that is why it's important to get on top of your standards, know exactly what it is, where you can start educating the consumer. The more we educate the consumer, the more work will be there for the licensed plumber.
Yeah. And then, Marius, you did it. Yeah. Sorry, Richard.
No, I've just glanced at a question, which I think kind of you're the right person to answer. Can I ask it quickly?
It depends. If it's difficult, I've got a headache.
Okay, so Lawrence Janssen van Nieuwenhuizen asked, what is the IOPSA and PIRB doing to get local government and municipalities on board to get builders and the public to use qualified and registered plumbers? I mean, that's a question that has been asked so many times, and it's so pertinent. He says he's from a particular area. Marius, I think you know him. and it's as if he says that it's as if in his area the building inspectors just don't worry about it at all, and they would see things like this and just not do anything. And what's the
Okay,
so what
so just to put everybody in the picture, we are doing, a bit, but obviously we're not doing enough, and it is quite correct in terms of that. You can go from one part of Cape Town and you'll find that the water or the building control officer will support PIRB or IOPSA sort of members in doing the work or whatever, and vice versa in terms of Gauteng. If you go to Gauteng, it's a bit of a challenge. Go to Shwani, it's totally different. So we had a workshop, a combined workshop this weekend, or last weekend rather, in terms of IOPS and PIRB, and we just sat in the room, for 3 days, 2 days, and it was just to thrash out, where our challenges were and what it is that we were going to start doing. So we have got a plan. We've identified individuals that are coming on board. Lorraine Moy will be joining IOPSA from next year with her mandate of working with local government and building control, etc., etc. And then we've got another rollout plan, for each region. So we're just finalizing that, but we've made a concerted effort and realized that yes, we got to the plumbers, but our PR work or public relations stuff is not quite where it should be. So again, we have identified that we need to start doing a little bit more in terms of the communication to the consumer. We are very in touch with the insurance sector. I was with King Price last week Thursday, and we had a really good meeting in terms of what the expectations are, etc. So there is movement, but I'm going to be honest, it's not exactly where we would be. Sometimes the BCOs or the water inspectorate find that we may be trying to take over their jobs, and we all know that most building control officers, and it's a known fact. They're very sort of not technically orientated in terms of plumbing. They don't quite understand where it is. So it is a challenge, but it's something that IOPSA and PIRB have put out there. We are there to work, and we do work with those that come along. But it's this type of thing, I've got to be honest, I don't think a building control officer has actually been on the site unless he stayed at the B&B and just had his breakfast and a cup of tea and a biscuit and left. But I think that it's a part that we all have to do. I think it's for us anyway. Is we can all say somebody else must do it, but collectively, and Maurice will tell you, and Mahen and Richard, you'll agree that the best people to promote this industry is ourselves. Mahen being the right sort of candidate here, he's gone to site, he's seen some dodgy work, and he's asked the questions. He's educated the owner of the establishment, and we need to start doing the same. We need to start in our quotations, in our conversations, everything else is promoted, because the more we promote it, the more we get out there, the better things are going to be. We need to educate that consumer, and that is a point that both IOPSA and PIRB are on a concerted effort in terms of communications. We're not really good at doing our PR. It was established over the weekend. We do some wonderful things, but we just don't tell people about it. We just put our head down and get into the next battle. But we've established ways in which to communicate that in terms of how we can educate and train with a concerted effort to work with some of the local authorities. Marius can give you feedback just in his area, where you get real good support in one region and very little on the other, and you spend hours, in terms of educating, communicating, and it becomes a challenge. But we're not there. Not there yet, but we will get there.
Yeah, I think, Steve, to add to that is that what happens many times is that you have a turnaround of building control officers as well, and they come from various parts of trade. You could have a guy with a carpenter skill, and he can become a building control officer. So he's not clued up on plumbing, and now they send him out to do inspection on plumbing. But that is why the certificate of compliance is so important, is because that is where the plumber then self-certifies his work and takes the responsibility. And prior to 1977, the building control had a dedicated inspector just for plumbing, who was a plumber. So after that, when the National Building Regulation was written, this all changed, and then obviously we had the various trades coming in as building control officers, and that is why we have a responsibility as plumbers to say to to the man, listen, I've got an open drain inspection. I'd like you to check it. I've had many calls when I do that, and the building control says, but oh, your work is good. We don't worry about it. I said, no, please, I'd like that. You know, so insist on your open drain inspection, insist on the pressure test, make sure that it's there. And if you're capable of doing, give a bit of education to the building control officer of what we are doing, because that is how we will be promoting it, because it's everybody it's all our responsibility. It's not just one person's responsibility or the PIRB or IOPSA. It's each and every licensed plumber's responsibility out there to assist and educate the community out there.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, you know, Marius is quite correct. You know, I've spent a lot of time with the BCO. You know, we used to have BCO training, and just to put it out there, you know, is that, you know, we would have possibly 70 to 80 building control officers in the room every Wednesday, and then it just dwindled down. You know, the attendance just wasn't there. And, you know, again, we looked at it and thought, well, you know, let's focus our challenge on something else. So we moved from, you know, the BCO to Business 101, which is becoming very successful. And again, it's something we've got to really look at. But, you know, it's a two-way street. You know, they need to come to the party as well as us delivering. You know, it's no use standing there with 20 hot dogs and nobody pitches up, you know. So we really need to make a concerted effort. And again, not perfect. Marius, you did a solar training down in the South Cape. You had some interesting questions. How did that go?
That's right. Yeah, it went very well. What we came out there with is what is very important is, especially, you know, you've just done your solar course and you already, you know, it's like buying something and you want to try it out for the first time. So now you've done your solar course and you want to go and install solar. So your client finds out that you now solar qualified and he phones you, I want a solar. So, you know, you go and purchase the solar, you pitch up at his premise and you want to put the solar on. So you sort of over eager, and you didn't notice that his roof has not got the right inclination, it's not facing the right direction, and those challenges. And then you bought the solar, you're going to do it, and then you force it into whatever the situation is. And exactly the same when you receive a plan for quoting. Then the guy that drew the plan, he put in there 2 solar systems or whatever the case may be, is go and do an orientation. As you said this morning, you know, we've got Google Maps. Go and look at Google Maps. Go and look at the orientation of this house, where it's going to be built. Is it right? Is it suitable? Look at the pictures around it. Most probably you'll find that there's big trees or something for shading. So before you even quote, you can start with the client and giving him the correct advice in terms of, listen, sir, your house is not suitable for solar. You know, solar is a great thing, but obviously it must be suitable in terms of the orientation. That is so important. So then you can give the client the right advice. Everybody quoting can be then quoting off the same page, and most probably he will think better of you at that stage, giving him the correct advice instead of you know, just going ahead quoting and not informed. So now the house is built, and at the end of the project comes, you tell him, listen, it's not suitable for solar. He's going to say to you, but why didn't you tell me in the beginning? So yeah, do a bit of pre-planning, give that the correct advice, and you'll just look much more professional out there when you start doing this.
Yeah, Marius, I agree with you. That's one of my biggest sort of things that I emphasize most when I talk about solar is the pre-planning. And you've got to, I call it picking the client's brains. You've got to pick his brains or her brains so that you figure out what, because the other important thing, you need to figure out what their expectations of you are. If they have got expectations which are unrealistic and that you know you cannot deliver on, you need to adjust those expectations down to a realistic level, whatever it may be. So, and that to me is very important, because if they're expecting Rolls-Royce, but it's an impossibility because of certain factors, there's going to be unhappiness and animosity. But if they understand everything before you start, then it is it goes a hell of a long way to well, as you say, smooth the waters, eh?
Absolutely. And then the other thing, obviously, is when we do audits, we do find, you know, that we come across a Geyser installation that has just been done on a solar system, and then you find these horrendous installations. And this is the problem out there, is because there wasn't any pre-planning. And then obviously when solar, the hype came in about 2008, when Eskom couldn't deliver the demand, they had all these rebate systems. Everybody thought, well, this is the way to go, you know. So everybody wants a solar, but we end up with a lot of these retrofits in the roofs now, and they are horrendously installed, and they are not working properly. You've got to go and do installation for the insurance company, and you've got to try and sort of meet halfway to get it compliant. And now you've got to get the fight with the consumer to tell him that it's not compliant, you know. And he says, yeah, but the guy that installed it 10 years ago, he did it, so it should be right, you know. So if you're doing it from now on, you know, make sure that everything is compliant where you start off with your planning, because it's going to come back to bite you. Because the COCs have been written for solars ever since 2010 already. So I've come to a installation many a times. Then the client pulls out the COC, says, yes, but Pete installed this, you know, and you look at it and you say, well, here's a COC, but look at the installation. So that can actually come back and bite you, because you've certified that this thing was installed correctly. So make exactly sure that when you're writing that COC, that you have made it compliant, because you still will be held liable in the end of the run of this.
Karim, are there any questions? Sorry, we've been wrapped up on other stuff. So just ask a few questions.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the questions. So the first question is, when will it become mandatory for a seller of a home to provide a plumbing COC as well as the electrical COC, which is already mandatory when selling a house?
Well, I can take that one. It's actually becoming more and more relevant in our area specifically. I find that on a daily basis that people are starting to request this, and it's coming from your conveyancy lawyers, where they want to transfer the property, and they are requesting, because more and more they're finding out that they have to sort of answer the questions why the plumbing isn't up to standard. We've received an electrical certificate of compliance, but why not for the plumbing? So this is becoming more and more relevant, and the estate agents are also starting to ask this, because once they've sold the house, they also have a certain responsibility in terms of what they sold. You know, didn't they check the house properly out? And they want to sort of clear themselves, and they want to get somebody to take that responsibility now. So now they're starting to ask for the certificate of compliance. But as we know currently, and I think Steve will help us, is as we speak now, a certificate of compliance is being designed for this purpose. Our current COC is not designed for this purpose, so obviously we can't use that. What I use here is a home inspection list that IOPSA has designed to do the inspection, and then it goes about, you know, taking the photos, do a report on the photos, all the non-compliances, and write this report. So it's quite a encompassing job to do this, and sometimes it takes me 2 to 3 hours to write this report on a certificate of, or well, for a sale of a property, because of all the non-compliances you get. Because you've got to quote it. So yeah, doing this is also, once again, you're taking some responsibility, because you must now go and quote the standards and make sure that what you're putting out there is correct, because it can also come back to you and say, but you certified this, you actually said that this is what was wrong, and whatever you did. So it's quite a responsibility that you're taking when doing this as well.
Yeah, Marius, I'll tell you what, I've had 4 complaints this week. And again, it's going back to the plumber not doing due diligence, you know, issuing the PIRB COC for the solar property. And again, when it's audited or questions come up, and it's normally, you know, just after the, you know, a couple of months after, the new buyer or the buyer has now got a small plumbing problem, and the licensed plumber comes in and starts ticking the box in terms of non-compliance. And, you know, unfortunately, they're going legal, you know, because the information on that document has been provided, the sale's been done in accordance with that and based on that document. So I had 4, you know, where hardly any of the non-compliance has been noted, and it's just like the guys walk in, flush the toilet, and see if there's hot water, and just walk out and do whatever they need to do. So yes, there is a document. It's in its final stages. It's just going to be approved, and then it'll be up and running. Next one, Karim.
Next question is, if we find people that do these kinds of installations, or a company that allows people to do geyser installations that are not qualified, and there's no licensed plumber on site, but a COC is signed by the plumber, but he's not even on site, who could we report it to?
Please send it to us. You know, again, and I just want to re-emphasize this, you know, that both IOPSA and PIRB, if this was signed off by a licensed plumber, I can assure you that we'll take it on. You know, there are many cases where, and again, PIRB being very, very proactive in terms of this. We will conduct the audit, we'll go out and do the findings and everything else. So the key thing is we can only do with what we know of. So if we come across any of this type of thing, and it does go through, and please don't take it that you like this whistleblower or whatever, you know, to not do anything, you know, with an installation, particularly that we're looking at now. Yeah, I think sometimes if we don't report it, we know better than the guy that installed it. And the guy who's bastardizing or prostituting plumbing by signing off COCs, he needs to be dealt with. You know, that's a reality. I mean, I often say it, you know, you're not good enough to do the job, you know, because some Bush Baptist got the job, and now, but you're good enough to sign it off. I just sometimes don't understand that logic, you know, that a plumber didn't get the job, but yet he's quite prepared to go and sign it off. And I just sometimes can't get my mind around that, is how you would actually do that. You're actually just adding to the problem. It's mind-blowing.
Thank you for that. Okay, the next question is, how long is the COC valid for? Surely as plumbers can't be responsible forever.
Well, I think if I can put it that way, you remain responsible until such time that somebody else works on it and provides another certificate of compliance, because it's still your installation. If nothing has changed, then you still held liable for that. But what that is where it's very important when you do an installation, we all have the facility to take a photo today. So you take a photo of your installation, you file it with your invoice, and you have record of what you installed. So obviously, if something goes wrong in the end, and it comes up and you listen, you did this installation, you can pull out your certificate of compliance, say this is where I wrote the non-compliances, whatever the case may be for this installation, if there are any non-compliances. And then obviously you pull out your photo and say, this is what it looked like. And we had exactly that in Stillbay a couple of years ago, where the gentleman installed the geyser, and 3 weeks later he had a complaint about it, and he pulled out his photo. He said, but this is not the same geyser. Somebody has changed this geyser. It's a different geyser completely, and this is not my installation. So he had proof, and you could go and indemnify yourself. So make sure you keep record of whatever you do. This is what it is. If you've got a business, you keep records, and that is something that the government wants you to keep. So have a record of everything you do. And if something is wrong and it varies from what you did, then you've got the proof to do it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And then the next question is, would it not be beneficial for PIRB or IOPSA to engage with the banking industry, who are the financiers for most homes, to make a plumbing COC a compulsory document to transfer along with the electrical COC?
Yeah, so to answer that, yes, we have. We engaged with Debbie Donaldson. I'm sure those guys that you know, have attended during COVID, you know, Debbie was doing our last calls. Debbie is from that sector, and Debbie has been working really hard in terms of engaging with the banks and everything else in terms of that, and the insurers, you know. So again, you know, from the banking side, you're talking to two different, you know, sort of functions. You've got those that are lending money, then you've got the insurance side of things. So again, we've always said that certificate of compliance for the plumbing on a new build, especially, you know, in terms of that, inquiring and making sure that that's done, and then also in terms of the sale of the property. So therein lies a challenge. You know, the individual puts his house on the market for R1 million, and then you come in and you do the home inspection check or whatever, and then you start finding out there's 100,000 rands worth of plumbing, you know, repairs or things that are not correct, and then it starts, you know, adding. So there's 3 individuals that we're dealing with, or in fact 5. You got the bank who's lending the money, the insurance company that's insuring that property. You then have the estate agents, you know, and I'm going to be honest, in my communications with the estate agents, they weren't overly happy about the proposal, because, you know, there's some things like latent and patent defects. So that homeowner may not be aware of those things, but, you know, now it's been brought to the fore and he has to rectify it. So there's massive challenges, but Debbie is working on it. You know, she was engaged by PIRB with that mandate to go out and sing that song. And we've had a couple of reports, and again, these things take quite a while. You know, it's not just a case of walking in and saying, we think it's a good idea. They've got to get actuaries involved, different types of things. Where's their risk? So it is quite a massive one, but yes, it is being worked on.
Thank you for that, Steve. I'm just going to read one more question for this morning's session. So the question is, surely a plumber can't be held responsible 1 year after the work has been completed. Please also remember or consider the corrosion on material.
Can
So I think,
I jump in?
Yeah, Richard, jump in, and then I'll jump in after you, and then we can wind up.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just a personal observation or a personal feeling. Any plumbing installation that we as professional plumbers do or install, the general premise of it is that it needs to last the lifespan of the building. Okay, it's no good that we go and we're not talking about a corrosion. I hear what you're saying about corrosion, but that's plain to see for anything. We're talking about the way in which the installation has been done, with the correct materials, done in a way that is going to last. Yes, we are liable a year afterwards. Yes, we're liable 5 years afterwards and 10 years afterwards, because this is what we're supposed to be doing. It's possible to do a plumbing installation that lasts 15, 20 years. Of course it's possible. And if nobody comes and does something after the fact, then it's still our original installation, and we need to stand by it. I feel very strongly about this. So I'm saying, of course we need to have responsibility years down the line, because we were supposed to have put something in the first place that can last for 15 or 20 years. That's the basis of plumbing. It's no good we go and put something in that we know is only going to last 8 months. That's not good enough. So yeah, anyway, there's a lot more detail. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also not only the standards, Richard, but we also have the Consumer Protection Act that comes into play and everything else. But, you know, let's be honest. I mean, if you do a geyser installation and then it's compliant and everything else, but it corrodes, I mean, that's something that you're not going to be held liable for. But bearing in mind that, you know, if you've done, let's take this, you know, creepy installation here, and nobody, you know, trips over the geyser and that starts the process. I mean, this would go on and on and on, and we've already seen it. A geyser's been replaced under warranty, and, you know, I don't know who's been held liable for what. But the idea is, we're professionals. You know, we need to go and do the work according to those standards, and if we can't, then we need to document it. And if we do our job properly, we shouldn't really have to worry about what's going to happen a year or 2 or 3 years time, so long as, like Marius has said, we've got the photos, we've got the documentation, everything is there, and it's defendable. And that's really what it boils down to. So it's not that you're going to come back and open and knock on the door. If you've done your work correctly, followed all due process and everything else, and protect yourself, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. But this guy here, I don't know how he sleeps at night. You know, maybe he sleeps upside down like his geezers. But yeah, that's just my thoughts there.
Oh, I think, Steve, if I can add to that as well, that is the importance of using approved products, because if you are using an approved product, that product comes with a warranty and a lifetime. So obviously, if there's a failure in your installation, you can go back to the manufacturer and say to him, this is your problem, this is your failure. So he can take the responsibility. So that's why you must make sure that you're using approved products and installing it according to the manufacturer's specification. That's important. Because if you're not using or installing according to the manufacturer's specification, you are going to be held liable. They're going to walk away from the claim. So it goes about responsibility, taking on the responsibility of the installation by using approved products, doing it according to this manufacturer's specification. Then you've actually covered all the knots and crosses, and you can sit back and enjoy the ride, because then somebody is going to be responsible for your installation in terms of the materials. Because that's the only thing that can go wrong after installation is a failure of materials. If it's
right, Richard, do you want to wind up and just then we'll go to Mahen and then Marius, and then we'll just close up. And if there's anything else that we are, again, Karim, if there's a lot of questions that we haven't answered, and if it's okay with those in attendance again this morning, I really see the numbers being absolutely awesome. I just want to close off by saying thank you very much to everybody that's in attendance. Please, guys, give us some content. It's not that Richard's lazy, but you know, these are just things that we try and bring up that are relevant in terms of that. So Richard, Marius, and then Mahen.
Yeah, I just wanted yeah, same sentiments, but just touching on one comment here, Steve. Maybe you can comment on this quickly. Kurt pointed out that the Conex fittings are correct on this installation, so he's expecting 300 CPD points. Are we? Is that? Maybe
No,
you
we're
just
going to
want
go and do an adjudication. That we're going to
Okay.
have a meeting about a meeting, and then we'll have another meeting, and then we'll adjudicate if
All right.
Kurt. I was going to say that the
So-
geezer's level. You know, I was going to say at least it's level, but you know, there again, I've got to go and have a look at that.
Yeah, okay. But no, thanks very much, guys. Nothing from my side. Marius?
Yeah, from our side, thank you very much.
Mayen, you want to close off for us? Since you started
Yes,
this
Kev,
conversation.
sorry. Yeah, no, I am part. Yeah, I'm just like my mind's a bit lost in terms of being overwhelmed about what goes on. From my side, thanks guys for attending, and yeah, it's been awesome being here part of the presentation team.